So there is a nonprofit called PolitiFact, right? And as the name suggests, they are a fact checker, and they mainly focus on like political stuff, right? Like they fact checked, politics and that kind of stuff. But they do that stuff in general. And so, but every year in December, what they do is they put out what they call the lie of the year, right? So they kind of look back at the year, all the things they've been doing, and they kind of like put something out that says this is the lie of the year. And here are some from the past, okay? In 2018, their lie of the year was the Parkland school shooting, right? Because there was a lie that was going around that really caught on, that a lot of the students in the videos who were crying and that kind of stuff were all actors. Like, it didn't happen. This was all fake. It was all acting. And that was the lie of the year, right? In 2020, that was COVID. So they just kind of said, like, COVID misinformation. Like, that was the lie of the year, because that was. I mean, it feels like so long ago, but it's only like less. It's like 5-6 years ago. And there's so much stuff happening with that. And so that was the lie of the year. In 2022, it was the Ukraine war, and it was Putin who and all of his lies that justified the invasion, right? Where it's not even a war, it's a special military operation, right? And so that dominated the news, and so that was the lie of the year. And so in 2025, right, just a month ago, what was the lie of the year? They didn't name one this year. They couldn't. And so instead of a 2025 lie of the year, they just said 2025 is the year of the lies. And so this is the editor-in-chief of PolitiFact, and they interviewed her on this decision, and she said, "We have been doing this for a long time, and the volume and severity of the inaccurate claims was just overwhelming, and we felt that it was insufficient to name just one of our lies of the year. So we wanted to catch people's attention and take stock of the times we're in." The times we're in, right? Lies have been around since the dawn of sin, right? Right from the beginning, when humanity rebelled against God, lies have been around, right? But a few things now are different, and it's taken lies to a whole nother level, right? I think we have tribalism and polarization, which is so strong now, and it makes us willing victims to the lies, right? We're willing to believe the lies our side puts out. And so people now are having trouble with that, because they're just like, oh, like the other side lies, my side doesn't, done. And so then they become victims of these lies. I think technology and the improvements in technology allows us to make lies much more realistic. If anybody here has ever played around with some of the new generative AI, like the image stuff, where you can like create whatever. I see some smirks there, right? And you can create things. It used to be, back in the days, you needed like a degree in graphic design to like know how to Photoshop stuff. It was like really hard to do. I remember Photoshop's too expensive, but there's an open source version called GIMP. And I tried to like learn how to use it, because I want to do very simple things, like remove the background of a picture so I can have just the thing I wanted and have a blank background, right? Or like on a family picture, like how do I edit this? And it was like on YouTube, do this, do that. Like none of this worked. It was so hard to do, right? But now you just say, hey, do this, make it, and it's so easy. I like to make like Christmas cards for Barbara, and so it's always I try to do something funny. And in the past, it would be like Microsoft Paint, like that's what I'm good at. And it's like real like. But now, oh man, I can be like, okay, I want a picture of this. And like, let's do that. And I'll be like, oh, Barbara, take a look at this. And so I'll like create pictures of our family in cartoon form, and they do funny. It's like so easy, right? And so you can make lies so much more realistic now. And because making them easy, you can make them at such a fast rate, right? You can just keep pumping them out, and that's what happens. And there's so much out there, right? And then we have social media now, and that spreads lies at a rate that's unheard of. I mean, think about back in the days if you wanted to send a lie out, right? So if you're like, some monarch, and you're just like, hey, I want to send this, lie out, what'd you have to do? If the printing press was invented, you had to be like, all these things, cut it out, use those little letters, like, okay. And then you had this big stack, and you had to give them to a guy, and he's on a horse, like, riding into, like that takes forever. That's why lies spread slower. Now, you can spread it across the world in like a button. Boom, it's out there, right? And we live in a world now where we don't trust experts. Anybody here who is in the medical field must be just so annoyed when random people are like, let me tell you about this disease. I know how to research, right? And anybody who has, is like an expert in any field knows that just because you looked it up on the internet doesn't mean you know a lot about it. Like there's a reason why if you search your symptoms on WebMD, you are going to die, right? It doesn't matter what you are going to die. And now we live in a world where people are using AI to like get counseling, to get that kind of stuff, right? And they don't realize that it's not actually giving you advice. It's just going online to search for those articles, not really parsing them out too much, and then like giving it to you in a real good, grammatically correct, mostly a paragraph, right? And so it's really difficult in this world that we live in, right? We don't trust experts, and we're easily swayed by influencers, right? Influencers whose goal is clicks, not your well-being. They can really have a lot of power and influence because we listen to the loud voice, not the smart one, right? So I think PolitiFact, they're trying to say this. So they're saying the times we're in is different, right? Last year we were in the year of the lies, and that is just the world we live in, right? And now we have to figure out how do we navigate that, and how do we figure out what's true, what's not in this world where it's very difficult. What's kind of crazy is like we all thought, right, that when the internet came out, everybody's gonna like have all the information at their fingertips, that like misinformation would decrease because you can find the truth. And yet, I think now today we are more we buy into lies more than we did pre-internet, right? It's just the world we live in, the times we're in, because words are powerful. Right? Words are powerful. We've seen how dangerous they can be. So a lot of stuff that is happening in our world, right, it has been, like started by people's words, right? And people who are lying about stuff, and then people listen and it follows, and it's just crazy, right? And on the flip side, right, because so far I'm saying all the bad things about the power of word. On the flip side, words can be so transformative for the good, right? Have you had somebody in your life that you trust, that you looked up to, say like a piece of advice to you that was transformative, right? I hope you have somebody like that, whether it's a parent, another family member, teacher, coach, right? I had pretty good success in track, but it was all started because I had a high school coach my freshman year who just said, hey, Gene, you could be pretty good if you like trained. That's it. That's all he said. And I was like, huh, really? Didn't know that. Okay, if you say so. And I started training, right? But the thing is, if that coach never said that, I probably would have just been like, yeah, goofing around just like everybody else, right? But it's like that one word. Like, words are powerful. And so today, We are in part 3 of our Proverbs series. This is the last part. Proverb is all about wisdom. And we're looking at it from 3 perspectives, right? Wisdom in character, wisdom in relationship, and wisdom in words. And so today, we are doing wisdom in our words. How can we be wise with our words? And so, again, a quick overview of Proverbs. It's the book of Proverbs is a collection of Proverbs, and Proverbs are basically wise sayings, right? They're mostly attributed to King Solomon, but not all of them. But we a lot of times when we talk about, we just think about these are Proverbs of King Solomon, right? And the purpose of the book is to give wisdom, instruction, and insight. And when we talk about wisdom in a biblical sense, it's really simply the ability to make the right decision or the ability to make good decisions, right? That's different from intelligence because you can know a lot of stuff and then just choose the wrong thing, right? Wisdom is the ability to actually make those good decisions. And I just want to reiterate this. I've done this for the last couple messages, but it's important that Proverbs are not prophetic. It's not a wise saying that is always 100% true. These are general wise saying that are generally true. All right, the example I use is in chapter 10, verse 27. The fear of the Lord adds length to life, but the years of the wicked are cut short. That is generally true. Generally, if you choose to live a life of wickedness, of crime, your life probably will be cut short because bad things happen, right? However, that is not always true. There are lots of really bad people who will make a ton of money, gain a lot of power, live to an old age, and then die. All right? So it's generally true, but it's not always true. And so we got to understand that as we're reading Proverbs. So today, we are talking about wisdom in our words. What does wisdom look like in a person's word? And so we're going to look at this, and this is kind of a little bit messy, but just bear with me. Right? We're going to look at this in 2 directions in 3 ways each. Right? So you're like, oh no, this is like multiplication here, right? Right? So the 2 directions we're going to look at this are the words that come out of our mouths, the words that we say, and then the words coming into our ears and ultimately into our hearts, right? So the 2 directions we're going to explore is going out and then going in. And so the question you want to ask while we're going through this is this: am I wise with my words? The second question is, am I wise with the words I receive? Okay, those are the 2 directions. And in each direction, we're going to look at it in 3 ways. One is the power of words. The second is the character of words. And the third is the source of our words, okay? Power, character, source. Those 3 ways in both words going out from us and then the words we take in, okay? So let's go with the first one, power. The power of words. Let me read a couple of verses to you. Chapter 15, verse 4. The soothing tongue is a tree of life, but a perverse tongue crushes the spirit. Chapter 18, verse 21. The tongue has the power of life and death, and those who love it will eat its fruit. In chapter 12, verse 18. The words of the reckless pierce like swords, but the tongue of the wise brings healing. And so words are powerful, right? And it can be used for good or evil. And again, we know this because we remember the nasty things spoken to us. It could be years later, right? For those of us who are, past our midlife, I bet you can still remember nasty things spoken to you when you were a child. All right? We can instantly recall that. And on the flip side, we remember some of those compliments. We remember some of those words of blessings spoken over us as well. We remember these things. Words are powerful and they can be used for good and evil. And so being wise with our words is so important because it is so powerful. right? Here's a fun little analogy. Do you know what a supercar is? Okay, so some of you drive really nice cars, right? They would be probably labeled luxury cars, right? They're not normal like my Kia, which is an awesome car, but it's not a luxury car, right? You might have a luxury car. Then there's another category called a supercar. These are cars that are like, $250,000, $500,000, like Ferraris and Lamborghinis and that kind of stuff. The ones that they'll make like 100 a year or less, right? Supercars are insanely fast and powerful. They're actually designed to not drive slow. You can't drive them slow. Their engines just aren't designed for that. And so you can look this up, right? You always have these stories where some rich guy, usually young, right, and usually male, almost always male, right? And they're like, my dad's a billionaire. He got me a Lamborghini. And they don't actually know how to drive it. They think they can drive it like it was my Kia. And so they're just like, and they always crash these cars because they are so powerful that it doesn't take much, just go. And then they don't know how to turn. I mean, they know how to turn, but they don't know how to control it. And there's if you search supercar fails or like supercar crashes, there's always these stories of people who are like, you see these pictures, right? And you're just thinking, the insurance on that car, right? Like you just drove it into a telephone pole, and it's like I just can't imagine if the parents here, if your kids got into an accident, obviously we want them to be safe, but you're probably buying them a used car, it's like, well, it is what it is. But like if you bought them a $500,000 car and like the first day they had it, they crash it, you get pretty upset, right? But our words are like that, right? Like it is so powerful, just like that supercar. And so it's so important to understand that and kind of wield this power carefully. Because we have this power within us, and at the same time, that power, the power of words, are aimed at us all the time. So it's both in and out. And so we got to be wise with the words we say, and we got to be wise with what we're hearing and what we're receiving. Okay. Second way is the character of words. Now, okay, we understand that words have power. Okay, I get it, right? What do we mean that we want to explore the characteristics and the character of words, right? Just like, when we talk about somebody has character, right? Somebody has high character or their character is suspect, right? Words are kind of the same, right? And so as we talk about what does it mean that we want to have, our words need to be of high character, I want you to think about it again from the words that are coming out of us and the words we're receiving. Okay, so these are some of the characteristics of words of character, of high character that we want to use and also be receiving. Okay, the first one is honest. Chapter 12, verse 22. The Lord detests lying lips, but he delights in people who are trustworthy. Second one is humble. Chapter 27, verse 2. Let someone else praise you and not your own mouth, an outsider and not your own lips. Not contentious. Chapter 29, verse 9. If a wise person goes to court with a fool, the fool rages and scoffs, and there is no peace. Right? The next characteristic is trustworthy. Chapter 11, verse 13. A gossip betrays a confidence, but a trustworthy person keeps a secret. And the last one is gentle. And I'm just using this. This is not the full list. This is just these are some that are really characters of high character words. The last one is gentle. Chapter 15, verse 1. A gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. Right? These characteristics are a great kind of like list. Like it's almost like a checklist that you can use to test the words that are coming out of you, the words you're saying, and also what you are hearing and what you're kind of like putting into your heart, okay? And so the third way we're going to explore is the source of words, right? Where our words come from is also very important. in chapter 4, verse 23. I love this verse, and then I'm going to read it in like different ways, right? Chapter 4, 23, it says, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it, right? So this is a verse that I kind of memorized when I was younger, but of course I used back then was the NIV 1984 version, not the 2011 version. And so I love the 84 version, right? It says this, above all else, guard your heart, for it is the wellspring of life. And so I have this picture of like, what, like a spring of water coming out, and that's your heart. And so you want to guard that. And it's like our words come out of our heart, right? In Luke, and this, I use another version here, right? In Luke chapter 6, verse 45, I use the Berean Standard Version Standard Bible, because that's kind of how I was raised, right? For out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks, right? So there's this idea that it's like whatever is in your heart, like that's going to bubble out, right? And that's what you're going to say. And so even if you're someone who is like real like tight-lipped and controlled what you say, eventually, it's like the overflow. It's like it's going to come out, right? And so what this means is that our words come from our heart, and it kind of reveals and is a reflection of our heart. And so examining our words is a great way to examine our hearts, right? Because we know ultimately, like, it's not about the words. I mean, it is about the words, but not exactly about the words. It's really about the heart. But it's hard to examine our heart, right? But we can do it. We can do it by examining our words. And so you can sit back and say, like, okay, how do I talk to people? Am I someone who, likes to joke around, and the way I joke is kind of cutting, and because it's funny, makes me feel better, and it's like, oh, okay, that reveals something about my heart, right? Am I someone who doesn't ever compliment, and it's just, I always criticize? Like, that reveals something about our heart, okay? And so this is a great way. It's like, how do you know what's going on in our heart? Examine our words, all right? And it's also a great way to examine the words that you're receiving, right? You're not, because the things you're receiving, what you're hearing is, maybe it's not so much the heart of it, but maybe it's the core or the foundation of it, right? And then you can decide, oh, like, what I'm hearing, they're saying this is the right thing, but like, hey, is this of high character? What kind of words that, right? And it helps you determine, is this source that I'm hearing, is this something this is something good that's pleasing to the Lord, or maybe something else, right? Because what we want to hear is not always what we should be hearing, okay? And so those are the three ways, right? The power of words, the character of words, and the source of words. And so we want to figure out, okay, what do we do with that going in our like everyday lives, right? So remember, we're looking at two directions and three ways, right? The first direction is the words we speak, okay? And I think the thing we got to really remember is, when we're thinking about what we speak, we got to know the power of our words, right? We got to know how much it can be used for good and evil, and so we want to use words to bless others, right? Like we want our words to be things people remember years later and say, oh, that word really blessed me. It really encouraged me. Like that's the kind of words we want to speak, right? We want to use words with high character, right? Our words should reflect what's in our heart, and we want in our hearts, right, things like honesty and integrity and humility, gentleness and peace, right? Though that's the character of the words we want to say and share. And we want to be aware that the source of our words, right? We want to be aware of the source of our words because it reflects our hearts. And so we want to make sure that what we say reflects our hearts and make sure that it is compatible with Scripture, right? And so that's another great way. It's like, okay, I say this, or these are the things I'm saying. Is it compatible? Can I put Scripture up to and test it, and does it work? Is it there, or is it like, oh yeah, you say a bunch of stuff, but like that's not what Scripture says, right? And so we want to be aware of the source of our words, because if what we say is not compatible with Scripture, we have to ask, well, where is that? Where's the source of that what we said, right? And then we got to figure out, okay, is that a good thing or not? Okay, so that's the first direction, right? Of the words we say, right? Know the power of words, right? Use words with high character and be aware of the source of our words. The second one is the words we receive. This is what we're listening to, what we're hearing, what we're reading, and that kind of stuff, right? And the first one, again, we're using the three different ways. Know their power, right? Be vigilant and wise about who you listen to and where you get your information from, right? Like it's just be aware of that, right? A lot of times we hear and we don't kind of have that like second level questioning of like, okay, I heard that. Who said that? Where is this from? Right? And then we don't then compare it with what Scripture says. All right. The second one is avoid questionable information and information from those with low or immoral character. Right? It's like, so who are we listening to? So one of the problems we have today, and this includes the church, is we say, it doesn't matter who says it. All that matters is what they say. So it's okay if I am listening to someone who can be proven and documented, someone with incredible low character. Because if the things they say is, quote, right, aka what I want to hear, that's good, right? That is not, we want to kind of test the things we hear with the character of the person as well, or the source, right? And if we find that, oh, this person, this source, like, is not something or someone of high character, right? Not someone of integrity and honesty or whatever, then we want to avoid that, right? Don't just listen, but test it with Scripture. And the last one, talking about the source, is do your research, right? Understand the source of the information you're receiving, right? This is not hard, right? Like that's the thing. There are so many ways to understand that. I think a lot of people today, the problem is there's like a fear. There's like, I know there's bias on all these sides, and I don't know how to figure out what's what, so I'm just going to pull away and not listen to anything, right? And that's not good either. We should know, like, we just know stuff, right? But there are lots of great ways. There are lots of great Christian sources that are going to, like for like news sources or whatever, that are Christian, that will kind of give you like, hey, this is where it is, and you can still test those with Scripture. One tip and a piece of advice is this, okay? Be extra careful with people and sources who use half-truths, right? Those are by far the most effective lies, right? Because if I just say some ridiculous thing, I mean, you might believe it, right? But most people are like, I don't know. But if I say a half-truth, right? And you find that they're like, you're always using half-truths, be really extra careful with that, because that's like literally how Satan operates, right? In the Garden of Eden, right? Satan was able to deceive Eve with a half-truth, right? There was just little things about it. And it's like, oh, and then he does. This is how Satan operates. So be really careful when there are half-truths, when there are things taken out of context, when there are things that are just like, hey, this is not the full picture, and they're doing this on purpose, okay? So that's just a little piece of advice. Here's the thing. We can't avoid lies. This is not. I think sometimes Christians, and I think in our culture it's like this, right? We have a culture and of avoidance. It's just too much out there, so let's just avoid it and get by. That's actually not a good strategy because we can't avoid it, right? It's coming at us, and actually one of the strategies of Satan is apathy, right? It's like, hey, just be apathetic, right? Just be apathetic. Don't even worry about it. And therefore, Satan can kind of do his thing, right? So we don't want to be apathetic. We don't want to be scared and then pull back and say, I just don't want to listen to anything. We don't want to be apathetic, and we can't avoid it. So if we can't avoid it, right? And the reason why we can't is because the lies and liars, they come looking for us. Right? They have an agenda. They come looking for us. That's kind of how like internet and social media and AI works, right? It's like there's the algorithm that you have that the social media companies do. Like they're coming to you. It's not like like they're saying, hey, we would like to present you with some information that we think are helpful for you. Like no, it's just like this coming at you. Right, so we're in a world now where you cannot avoid it. It's going to come at you, right? And this is absolutely tearing the church apart, right? And within the church, there are Christians who have embraced a lot of lies, right? And so we have to be very cognizant of it, and we got to A, understand it's happening, but also B, say, okay, I can't just avoid this. I got to do something about this, okay? And if we're not wise with our words, right? And when I say if we're not wise with the words I speak, and if we're not wise with the words I'm taking in, we become part of the problem, right? That's like the active part, right? We become part of the problem because then we repeat those lies. But even if we don't, right? Even if we're just like, I'm not going to say anything, right? We actually are easily manipulated then. And so that's more of a passive part of the problem, right? It's still a part of the problem. It's just a passive version. And we don't want to be either, okay? And so we, as believers, want to choose wisdom. Choose wisdom, right? Choose your words and the words you listen to wisely, right? Ask the Lord, say, God, I don't even know how to do this, right? But I want to be wise. And remember, when we sincerely ask for wisdom, God will transform us to be able to be wise. So let's pray.